Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Today we're going to be talking about Victoria's Secret. So they've kind of been in the news recently because there were some interviews that had happened, and some of the higher ups in Victoria's Secret basically kind of said something along the lines of they were almost pivoting what they're doing, and basically a lot of people kind of took that as they tried to do the body positivity stuff. You know, they were doing a lot of stuff with models that were, you know, maybe more plus size. I think they did some stuff with Lizzo, people that were, you know, not quote unquote Victoria's Secret models. And, you know, Victoria's Secret, since their inception, has always been like, I mean, basically hypersexualized, you know, like really focused on like the ideal beauty standard, like very thin. And I think that they even helped kind of usher in a new beauty standard of, you know, rail thin bodies. People really liked that in the early, you know, in the, like the 90s, the early 2000s. That was like really, really popular. And I would say that they had a hand to play in that. Maybe not the entire thing, but a hand to play in it. And so when body positivity and that stuff kind of started, they definitely pushed a little bit more into that space, and it seems that their sales are declining a little bit, and they've decided maybe to step away from that because they want to, you know, obviously they're a business, they want to make money. And so I actually found this video. I don't know who any of these people are. I've never watched a video from this person. I don't think it's the name is Chris Williamson is the YouTube channel. Again, I don't know anything about this person, and he's interviewing a man named Douglas Murray. I believe they're both from the UK. But they are kind of talking about this. And so I figured it was kind of interesting. The video is about 11 minutes long, but we're only going to watch about 5 minutes of it because most of the rest of it doesn't have anything to do with what we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Did you have Victoria's Secret's plan to bring sexy back on your 2023 bingo card?
Why are Victoria's Secret's bringing sexy back?
After experimenting with 300-pound mannequins, plus-size models, disabled models, trans models, a male model, and a 38-year-old football player, Victoria's Secret have made the controversial decision to switch strategy and start using hot women to model their underwear again.
It makes commercial sense, to my mind. It is quite easy. I'm always amazed that advertising executives find it complex, this stuff. I mean, all you need to do is stick sexy guys on stuff and stick sexy girls on stuff, and you can sell the merchandise. It sort of pretty much writes itself.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I do think, like, I understand why this stuff exists, right? Like why companies exist that kind of try and come out and break the mold. I think, like, if I were to, and I'm not a business major, I have no degrees, okay? I just want to make that very clear. But if I were to just use my noggin, right, my noodle, and just think about why people seem to not want to support Victoria's Secret in this endeavor, right? Just using my noodle. And the thing that comes to my mind is that people that are younger, especially, right? You know, Gen Z, I would say, I don't think like Gen Alpha is buying stuff yet. So like Gen Z, maybe younger millennials, you can see through when it's clear a company is doing something strictly because they feel it's the way to make more money, right? Like, I feel like it's pretty obvious versus a company that might come out and a big part of their mission is to go against what has become the norm, what has become popular, right? So say like a smaller company that is a newer in the, you know, lingerie space, trying to do the opposite of what Victoria's Secret has done for decades at this point, right? And so there's a difference between that smaller company coming up versus Victoria's Secret being like, oh, we changed our mind, you know, like, we're going to be body inclusive now. We're going to size inclusive. Like, I feel like people can see that and read it. And most people are going to be like, I don't know how I feel about this. There are clearly going to be people that support it, and obviously like celebrities that support it, because of course I can understand wanting to make that change and wanting more people to feel seen and be seen. But when it's a big company like that, it's just so hard not to just read between the lines and think, I mean, why are they really even doing this? Like, do they actually care? The answer is probably not, right? So that's my perception of it.
Yeah, I'm not particularly surprised that if you stick Lizzo in a bikini, it's not as appealing as a bit of sales merchandise. But, you know.
So I think the issue there is that before all the controversy that's happened with Lizzo. The thing is that like, it did work because it was Lizzo. But the issue is that most bigger women aren't Lizzo, right? And so they don't have that recognition. They don't have that the swaths of fans that were following. They don't have that. So they just are a bigger woman. And sadly, most people are just, it just doesn't sell. And I don't think it's just like it's men that see it and they think, ew, that's gross. It's obviously women too, because for the most part, I'd say that the people that are buying Victoria's Secret stuff are women, right? And maybe there's a few men buying stuff for their girlfriends or whatever, right? But for the most part, it's probably not dudes that are shopping there. And so even like the male gaze, like they kind of talked about, it even works with women. And so I don't know, it is very, very interesting that, you know, there was that breakdown, like it didn't work, right?
Live and learn, I suppose.
Live and learn.
Live and learn.
One of my friends owns a very big clothing company, and for a while they tried plus-sized models.
Yeah.
Mostly for women. There's not much of a body positivity movement for men.
No, not like a beer gut movement.
The skinny fat revolution.
Yeah. There definitely isn't as much of a body positivity thing for men. It's something that I hear a lot about. I think for the most part, we've talked about this before. For me, I think that it makes sense why there isn't, because men, we have our own, you know, pressures. Like one of the biggest things is how much money you're making, like your status, right? That's a huge thing for men. That's not as big of a deal for women. But with women, their looks is the same as what it's like as a man to be, you know, like how is your status, how much money you're making. Like those are a lot closer, right? And so yes, there is a little bit of body positivity for men, but the vast majority of it is for women. And it makes sense in my mind because like most women are being judged, and their most important thing is their looks, right? From what society will say, right? And then for men, the most important thing is how much can you provide? And so it makes sense why there's more women. Does that mean that I think there shouldn't be more men? No, absolutely not. I'm someone that considers myself body positive with my, you know, terry folds, my loose skin, and I try my best to be that voice. But like I understand that there's not going to be as many men, and that doesn't, for me, it doesn't really bother me that much.
And he said we've split tested this into oblivion. Big girls don't sell clothes.
Right.
So when you see that, when you see a company, you know, Ann Summers are making double plus size dildos or whatever, the company is actively hurting their top line and bottom line to be able to send the right message.
Right.
And that's all well and good up until some shareholder meeting where some 70-year-old guy looks at the far right column of an Excel sheet and goes, what the fuck's this?
Yes.
And they go, no, you don't understand. It's this really cool new movement. It's very progressive. And he goes, I don't care.
Right.
I want more money than we had last year, and this is less money than we had last year.
Yeah. Yeah, they, well, I mean, I suppose it all starts off from a good place, like some or many things. But look, if you might agree that, you know, it's not a good thing to sell anorexic-looking models to young women.
I think that's important. That's important to bring up because that is very, very true. And that is what was happening for so long. And so, like, I do think, like, I understand why the movement exists, in my mind at least. I get it, right? I talk about the pendulum so much, right? So the pendulum was over here with like the anorexic stick thin models for so long, and then it has swung way over here, right? This is where we're at now. And eventually I do hope it kind of whoop, 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 evens out in the middle, and we're just getting quote unquote normal looking people, right? And I understand everyone can be normal, you know, there's no normal person, but like we don't need the extremes, right? Like focus on what most people are looking like is basically what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, okay, let's all agree on that. But you can stop somewhere before morbidly obese. You know, that's where the whole thing goes wrong with the body positivity thing. Plus, there's a place where body positivity shouldn't occur. It should be, I mean, if somebody is so morbidly obese that they're at significant risk of heart failure, you shouldn't celebrate them. You should say, hang on a minute, steady on the donuts. But they don't say that. They just did. They run all the way.
There's definitely, it definitely goes too far in my opinion at times. I think it's a lot harder than just saying, steady on the donuts. It's a very complicated issue. But one of the things that frustrates me a lot is that people will say this, right? Oh, they don't need to be morbidly obese. But like, even if they have someone that is just slightly overweight, right? They're not at all morbidly obese. They're just like slightly overweight, or they don't look super fit. People will attack that person as well. And that's when I'm like, okay, you say one thing, but then when that's shown, you still don't accept it, right? Like, and so yes, I agree, but like I actually agree, and I get so frustrated when I see like a woman that's on a cover that, she's just not super thin, and people freak out about that, saying, "Oh my God, this agenda, blah blah blah," right? There's a difference between someone being slightly overweight or just not fit and being, 500 pounds. Like there's such a large difference in those people, and it's frustrating when people kind of just morph them together.
I wish that you could just have sort of healthy looking women on the ads and just draw the line there. But as ever, they sort of don't know where the line is until, as you say, something wrenches them back. And I think wrenches them back is normally, as you say, the bottom line.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this sort of performative empathy point for a while. Got this idea, I need to meme it better, but I think something like short-term empathy, or the shallow pond of empathy. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about what is most popular in culture at the moment is something that optimizes for its immediacy to signal that you are a good guy or good girl.
Right.
Even if that's at the expense of the ultimate outcome for the person. So let's say you're able to do something, giving the child ice cream. It may be what it wants right now. It may be bad for it long term. But if you're the ice cream promoter for the young children, you will be seen as a good person. Mm-hmm. And if you're the person who's saying, hang on a second, that's not what you want long term. Maybe responsibility in Peterson language, maybe not casual sex in Louise Perry language, maybe, not as much food as you want in body positivity language. You're seen as bigoted or judgmental or whatever.
That's because there's no countervailing force in the culture. The unlimited empathy, people have run a long way very fast because, as you say, there's a short-term gain to be seen to be being empathetic. Let's celebrate yourself.
I personally think that I don't necessarily agree with that point, because I think that, like he said, there's no counterpoint. And I just disagree. I think that there is a huge counterpoint. Like, there's tons of people that talk about body positivity not being the best, right? Like, I think that the body positivity thing is a lot smaller than the people that don't agree with it. And this is what I struggle with, because I've talked about this many times, right? With a lot of the stuff that body positivity or fat acceptance or whatever you want to call it, I know those are different movements, but like a lot of times they're lumped together. I agree with a lot of what they say, right? But there are times when it is taken too far, and that's when I, say like, hey, I don't really necessarily agree with that. So I think that the majority would see that, right, the Victoria's Secret stuff, and say, no, I don't agree with that. I'm not a fan of that. And we see that with the fact that they've decided to change it up, right? And so I don't necessarily agree that there's no one pushing back on it. I would say it's actually quite the opposite, in my opinion.
But ordinarily, you would have some other counterforce in the society, and different forces have provided that in history, including the church. But if there is no counterforce to say, for instance, long-term gratification better than short-term, or whatever, then yeah, and that's a sort of unappealing position in our society now. There's plenty of room for people to be in that space, but you're still on the defensive. We still live in a society where effectively to own an ice cream truck, in the sort of language of a child, would seem to be a great thing. Just let's have the short-term thing.
Yeah, so like I just don't necessarily agree with that last point. I think that at the end of the day, it's like you have to have a balance, and if it's always like you can never have any sort of short-term gratification, I don't necessarily think that's a life that's worth living. But to their point, if all it is short-term gratification that is at the expense of your long-term health, right, which is what we're talking about here, then yes, that's a problem. So it's about finding that balance. And I feel like a lot of people that want to find that balance really struggle with it, because a lot of the language that is used is either all or nothing, right? It's all the extremes. And that's why I tried to do my best to share and tell people, like, it doesn't have to always be the extreme, the extreme, the extreme. Like, there can be some middle ground there where you're having the ice cream every once in a while, but you just don't eat ice cream every freaking day, right? Don't have ice cream for every single meal. That would be a bad thing. But having it every once in a while is not an issue, and therefore that doesn't, in my mind, make the person that owns the ice cream truck a bad person. It means that you just have to practice some self-restraint and not be going to them every single day, right? But yeah, I just wanted to share that. That was just my take on this kind of video. If you want to watch the whole thing, I will link it down in the description, so you can tell that I didn't edit it or anything like that. We just didn't watch the whole thing. That's the only thing that I did. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.